Test.
Services team, they were like, "Oh, here's our idea for the Martin Luther King Jr. weekend," and they said, "There's this book we really like," and I had heard about this book, and they were like, "Oh, we basically just need somebody to kind of do a reading, like an extended reading of the book," and I was like, "Oh, I'd enjoy doing that because I've always thought like, oh, I would enjoy, you know, reading because I always like doing."
Hi. Hi. Good morning. My name is Scott Gorham, unfortunately unrelated to Amanda Gorman, and I am the lay leader today. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of the North Hills. Whether you've been with the church a decade or more, or if this is your first time visiting, we welcome you. Whatever the faith and traditions of your past, we welcome you. Whatever your theological stance, we welcome you. And whoever you are and whomever you love, we welcome you. Wherever you come from, whatever your journey has been, we welcome you. Newcomers and guests are always welcome to participate in any of the church activities. If you'd like more information about our church or Unitarian Universalism, please talk to our Director of Lifespan Faith Development, Dana Pass, or one of our board members. You can find contact information for Dana on the board or on our website. As our services are currently led by members of this congregation or outside guest speakers, every week will be different. If you are visiting our church for the first time, please come back again to experience the variety of services being offered. Also, if you're a new or returning visitor and you're so inclined, we'd love to if you would introduce yourself. Please raise your hand and someone will come around with a microphone. We've got 2 raised hands and the microphones are on their way.
Hello, I am Paige Croft. I actually live in Blacksburg, and I'm visiting Cindy here for the weekend with my husband. And she says, what are we going to do today? I said, I don't know. She says, well, why don't you come to church? And I said, sure. So I'm happy to be here. It's nice to meet everyone.
Welcome, welcome.
Hi everyone, we're the Rogers. I'm Erin, this is my husband John, and our son Fritz, and we are new here. Thanks for having us.
Welcome. That's great. Now I know who I've been talking to. Hi, Fritz. Please join us for coffee hour following the service. We now take a moment to acknowledge that the land we stand on was taken from the local indigenous people. Inspired by their culture, may we strive to become better stewards of the earth. We have 2 announcements today. Please join your Board of Trustees for a town hall meeting in the West Room immediately following the January 22nd service. That's next week. We plan to discuss ministerial options that will be on the ballot in the mid-year meeting. The second is, you see all these poinsettias. If one of them were donated by one of you, please come by after the service and take them home with you. Again, welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of the North Hills. It is good to be together, both in person and virtually.
My poem is called In This Place, an American Lyric. There's a poem in this place, in the footfalls, in the halls, in the quiet beat of the seats. It is here at the curtain of day where America writes a lyric you must whisper to say. There's a poem in this place, in the heavy grace, the lined face of this noble building, collections burned and reborn twice. There's a poem in Boston's Copley Square, where protest chants tear through the air like sheets of rain, where love of the many swallowed hatred of the few. There's a poem in Charlottesville, where tiki torches string a ring of flame tight round the wrist of night, where men so white they gleam blue seem like statues, where men heap that long wax burning ever higher, where heather higher blooms forever in a meadow of resistance. There's a poem in the great sleeping giant of Lake Michigan, defiantly raising its big blue head to Milwaukee and Chicago. A poem begun long ago, blazed into frozen soil, strutting upward and aglow. There's a poem in Florida, in East Texas, where streets swell into a nexus of rivers, cows afloat like mottled buoys in the brown, where courage is now so common that 23-year-old Jesus Contreras rescues people from floodwaters. There's a poem in Los Angeles, yawning wide as the Pacific tide, where a single mother swelters in a windowless classroom, teaching Black and brown students in Watts to spell out their thoughts so her daughter might write this poem for you. There's a lyric in California where thousands of students march for blocks, undocumented and unafraid, where my friend Rosa finds the power to bloom in deadlock, her spirit the bedrock of her community. She knows hope is like a stubborn ship gripping a dock, a truth that you can't stop a dreamer or knock down a dream. How could this not be her nation, su nación, our country, our America, our American lyric to write to? A poem by the people, the poor, the Protestant, the Muslim, the Jew, the native, the immigrant, the Black, the brown, the blind, the brave, the undocumented and undeterred, the woman, the man, the non-binary, the white, the trans, the ally. To all of the above and more. Tyrants fear the poet. Now that we know it, we can't blow it. We owe it to show it, not slow it. Although it hurts to sow it when the world skirts below it. Hope, we must bestow it like a wick in the poet so it can grow lit, bringing with it stories to rewrite. The story of a Texas city depleted but not defeated, a history written that need not be repeated, a nation composed but not completed. There's a poem in this place, a poem in America, a poet in every American who rewrites this nation, who tells a story worthy of being told on this minnow of an earth, to breathe hope into a palimpsest of time, a poet and every American who sees that our poem penned doesn't mean our poems end. There's a place where this poem dwells. It is here, it is now, in the yellow song of dawn's bell, where we write an American lyric we are just beginning to tell. Thank you.
Wow. That's a hard act to follow. we light this chalice for our children and youth, and for us, celebrating the flame of faith lit in each of us, honoring the light each of us bring into the world, rejoicing in the community we create together.
Good chilly morning. I'm Lynn Richards from the Lay Pastoral Care Team. During our service, we create this sacred space for sharing within our community. It is a time to share significant life passages with the congregation so that you can be held in loving care. I'll be reading the joys and sorrows this morning, and Susan Powers will be placing a stone representing each joy or sorrow in the sand. The sand represents our congregation, supporting our sorrows and lifting up our joys. Today we have one joy from Amy Terizzi. Update from last week. My dad went in Tuesday for a biopsy of the area that was found on his pancreas, and the doctor didn't find anything to biopsy. He goes at the end of the month for another CAT scan to be sure, but it is good news for now. To Amy and her family, we say, we share in your joy. We now place one more stone in the sand for all the joys and sorrows that do exist in our hearts, but which remain unspoken today. We especially think of our church community as we move through this time toward an uncertain, at this moment, future. Please know that the Lay Pastoral Care Team is here for you, to listen and to support you. Now please say with me our caring words, knowing that here includes all those watching. Let us hold in our circle of caring each person here. Let us hold in our hearts those who are unable to be with us today. Let us hold in our memories those who have moved on. Let us find comfort in knowing that we are not alone.
Hello, everyone. Hi. Couple of admin notes before I get started. I guess I should introduce myself. I'm Isaac. I think I've been coming here to this church for maybe a year now. So this is my first time speaking. So all the good vibes, nods, smiles, feedback you can give me, thank you. I appreciate that. Another thing, I told the tech team that I would probably be walking around because I wanted to be interacting with the kids who are here. And I think they heard that there wouldn't be class for them today, so they decided to stay home. Fair. So if you all wanted to kind of stand in for the kids, put in your childlike wonder, childlike openness to possibilities. There's a word that not many kids use. It's neuroplasticity. Some of you may know that word, but yeah, it's good for you to open up your neural pathways. So those are two things. The other thing is I'm going to be reading from a book a lot today, and I was going to be walking around. But also there's a lot of audience participation encouraged in today's service. So please help me out with that. How do we have one kid? How many kids here today? Well, we have one little one, but they're out there. Hopefully they'll be back in. All right, we'll get started with the story. So for today's intergenerational service, we're going to learn about a brave girl named Audrey Faye Hendricks. And the book that we're using today is called The Youngest Marcher. It is by Cynthia Levinson, and it's illustrated by Vanessa Brantley Newton. So here we go. Whenever Mike flew into town,
Audrey and her mama cooked barbecued ribs, stewed greens, sweet potato souffle, and Audrey's favorite, hot rolls baptized in butter. Other folks knew Mike as Martin or Dr. King. The Hendrickses used his nickname. They did the same with other ministers too, like Fred Shuttlesworth and Jim Bevel. After Mike blessed the feast, Mama expected Audrey to keep still during supper. But when grown-ups talked about wiping out segregation laws that kept black and white people apart in Birmingham, she just had to speak up. Audrey intended to go places and do things like anybody else. I want to eat my ice cream inside Newberry's. I want to sit downstairs at the Alabama. I don't want hand-me-down school books. But stools at the counter, plush movie theater seats, books so fresh they'd crackle when you open them, those were for white children. Hush, Mama hissed. 9-year-old children should not speak in front of company, especially ministers like Mike, Fred, and Jim, who were bringing dreams of justice. Audrey knew all about segregation. She knew to pay the driver at the front of the bus and then step off and walk around to the back door. Drink from the fountain with the dirty bowl and warm water. Use the freight elevator at department stores downtown. Front row seats, cool water, elevators with white-gloved operators. Laws said those were for white folks. So we're going to pause the reading. And just for the context, and you all probably know this, but for the little ones, segregation laws were a set of rules and practices put in place in the United States to separate people of different races from each other. These laws were in effect for many years, and they made it so that people of different races had to live, go to school, go shopping, and use separate public facilities. And here are some pictures of what that looked like. This was commonplace throughout the U.S. Up to the 1960s. And this is where I get to ask, does anybody here remember living through those times or being separated in that way? Some folks here? Absolutely. And yeah, it's not that distant in the past, as you all know. Back to our story. So, every Monday night, Audrey and her mama and daddy, and her aunts, uncles, and cousins joined neighbors and friends at Fred's church for worship, fellowship, and testimony. She sang and swayed along with the movement choir, her voice spirited and spiritual. Black and white together, we shall overcome. For once, she didn't have to keep still. Did you know that we have that song in our hymn book? It's there. So let's try singing that together, okay? So it's hymn 169, the gray hymnal. It's We Shall Overcome. The words will be on the screen. Please stand if you are willing and able. Alrighty, back to our story. So after the singing, then came testimonies. White store owners won't hire me. Ku Kluxers chased me. Policemen called me names. The hateful stories made Audrey squirm. She tried to tell her mama, "That's not right." Shh. How could mama expect her to hush? She had to make things right. But what could she do? When Mike visited Fred's church, thousands of people crowded around her to hear him preach. In a voice as taut as steel cables and as smooth as glass, he intoned, "Segregation is morally wrong and sinful." That's true. Fired up, Audrey sat taller. An unjust law is no law at all, he proclaimed. Audrey had listened to Mike explain his plan at her supper table and knew what he meant. If a law is unjust, disobey it. Sit down inside Newberry's. Picket those white stores. March to protest those unfair laws. Why, even marching was against the law. Then get arrested. Fill the jails, Mike exclaimed. Fill Birmingham's jails so full that policemen can't squeeze in one more person. Pack cells so tight that police will have to quit arresting people for demanding their rights. So, Audrey was right. Mike, also known, as we said earlier, as Martin Luther King Jr., was a great speaker. This is a special weekend where we have a holiday to celebrate his life and his work, and hopefully many of you get a chance to take time to observe that. Hopefully, kids get out of school or you don't have to work, and there's time that we get to remember Martin Luther King Jr. Right now, we're going to hear part of his most famous speech, "I Have a Dream."
I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creeds. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will they be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream. My 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today. That one day every valley shall be exalted. Every hill and mountain shall be made low. The rough places will be made plain, and the crooked places will be made straight. And the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together.
We're going to take care of the offering in just a second, but as many of you, when I listen to his words, it moves me. And one of the things that as we have this service, these congregations are, we hope, in the same tradition, in the same spirit, in the same vein as the congregations that Martin Luther King Jr. preached at. That people take the feeling, the inspiration that they get together in these settings and then take that out into their lives to do great things. So with those feelings that are stirred inside of you, I would hope that during the service today, you'll feel a resolve, and you'll get some ideas of what you can do to continue on in that tradition. As John Lewis said, to make good trouble. And we're going to keep on that theme as we go through the service. But during that clip, I felt that stirring. And some of you probably did too. And it'll probably keep happening. And so what I hope is that you'll take some notes internally, externally, wherever you can, and think about how you take these feelings, turn them into action. So let's do the offering.
So if you're here with us today in person, you know that the collection baskets were just passed. That was your chance to do good trouble. However, if you're joining us virtually, you can make your offering by mailing a check to the church or going to the ucnh.org website, finding the link in the upper right-hand corner that says donate, and making a contribution equivalent to what you would be putting in the plate or more. Please join me, now that we've given our offering, in saying the dedication to the offering. The words will be on the screen. May these gifts and the work of our hands and hearts give power to all we stand for as a community of faith.
All right, back to the story. So Audrey just knew that Mike's plan would work. She twisted in her pew to see which grown-ups would walk down the aisle and volunteer for jail, but they mostly stayed put, eyes staring at their feet, hands on their knees. Feet, hands, and knees didn't move. Fill the jails, Mike pleaded, meeting after meeting. But heads shook all around her. Audrey heard, "No, best not break those segregation laws. Boss man will fire me. Landlord will evict me. Policemen will beat me. If nobody protested, Mike's plan would fail. Police could keep arresting anyone, anytime, for anything. forever. Audrey would never be able to go places and do things like everybody else. One night, Jim announced a new idea. If grown-ups wouldn't do it, fill the jails with children. Audrey leaped to her feet. "I want to go to jail," she declared. Mama looked deep and saw that Audrey's eyes begged. "Please." "Okay," Mama said. Audrey strutted down that aisle. She was going to jail. Now for some discussion. So we got some mics we're gonna pass around, or one mic. Why do you folks think Audrey was excited to go to jail? We got a couple. All right.
I think she was just excited to do her part. She had been hearing what needed to be done, and she wanted to do it.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, that she'd heard these words and was inspired, and she no one else was going to do it, but she knew that she could do it, and she was going to do it with her friends. The children were going to show the way.
Absolutely. Thank you. Other thoughts?
She wasn't grown up yet. She didn't have a past. She has a future. She wanted to see herself in the future like everybody else.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, all those things. She had her whole life ahead of her. She had big dreams for the life that she wanted to live. And, I think what's relevant for us here is sometimes as adults, our dreams, we let go of our dreams. And maybe that had happened to a lot of the grown-ups around her, that they had let go of those dreams, that naive urge toward justice and freedom had been kind of tamped down inside them. But it hadn't for Audrey. That fire still burned bright. Thank you for your participation. All right, so now we're going to get back to the story. Not lose my page here. Okay. Two mornings later, she put on a fresh pressed pinafore and shiny Mary Janes and turned down socks. Protesters got to look nice. That's why I dressed up today. You all don't see me in my suit very often, but I wanted to, be in the tradition of those folks. Protesters got to look nice. In the meantime, her daddy bought her a game to help her pass time in jail. Her mama and daddy took her by Center Street Elementary to tell her teacher she'd be absent, maybe for a whole week. Miss Willis wrapped her arms around her. Audrey knew she was proud of her. She said goodbye to her grandparents. "You'll be fine," her grandmother said. She knew Audrey would be brave. So did Audrey. When her mama and daddy drove her to 16th Street Baptist Church, where the children were gathering, even before she reached the door, Audrey heard loud voices chanting freedom songs. Inside, hundreds of big kids called out to friends and crowded around signs for their high schools. Parker, Carver. Her head swiveled. Where was the sign for Center Street Elementary? She was the only protester from her school, the youngest child in the whole church, and she knew no one. Audrey huddled by her parents in the basement. But when Jim lined her up with the others, 2 by 2, and the door swung open, Audrey straightened up. She was going to break a law and go to jail and help make things right. Clutching a protest sign in one hand and her game in the other, Audrey marched out the door. She stomped and sang, Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around. Turn me round, turn me round. All right, we're going to pause here on the signs, and hopefully you can see what some of those signs say. I'll read them out loud. There's one sign that says, "Can a man love God and hate his brother? Freedom now. Segregation is sin. Justice for all." So question for you all. What do you think was the point of these signs, these words that accompanied their marching? Thoughts?
Think of yourself as a kid.
Yeah.
Well, I think that they were marching in a area of the South that is very the Bible Belt, and the way to hit them probably the best is to point out, you claim to love God, and yet you're hating his other creations.
Yeah, absolutely.
I see it as reflecting Martin Luther King's study of Gandhi's practices, realizing that the path to success lay in the conscience of the oppressors, and these signs are basically making that point.
Thank you. Other thoughts? We got,
sorry.
Oh, and thank you, Robin.
Just something quick I thought about, that the signs would actually show their message on TV or newsreel. So if you can't hear what they're saying or what they're fighting for, it's like, if they're on the news, people watching it will know,
That's right. Absolutely. And Robin, thank you for running the mic around. Very much appreciate it. Absolutely. They had a message, and they did what they needed to do, and this is powerful, that their appeal to conscience, appeal to people's better angels, that they wanted people to be shaken free of this oppressive system. So there are probably signs, there are probably issues these days that people are still carrying signs about. So what are some issues, some things that you've seen signs that you agree with, or signs that you've made? What kinds of things have you marched, or if you were ever going to march, what kinds of signs or messages or issues are important to you? Reproductive freedom, yes, thank you.
I'm a nasty grandma, and I persist.
Amazing, yes. Shout out to nasty grandmas.
Trans rights.
Trans rights, absolutely.
Love is love, no matter who's involved.
Love is love.
Fix Harrisburg.
Fix Harrisburg, absolutely.
Pass the gift ban, which refers to the same thing, that lobbyists have uncontrolled giving.
Absolutely, absolutely. Other things people want the world to know about, want to see changed. Well, I'm with it. I'm with you in all of those. So sometimes it can be hard to do things outside of what you've been taught is acceptable, to shout those things. Here, as a parent, this story is striking to me because so often it is hard as a parent or as a grown-up to say, hey, kid who trusts me, kid who I'm raising to be a good member of society, these laws here, they are wrong. And so we're not going to follow them. And in this case, these parents sent their kids to go and to do this very dangerous, very intense, very scary thing. Now, for all of us, we might not ever be asked to do something as scary or as intense, but as we had a great message last week with Sunshine about doing things that are a little bit uncomfortable, I'm going to ask you all to do something a little bit uncomfortable with me. We're going to do a little march around. There's a nice little racetrack here. You see, we go up that way, around, down here, and we're going to march. And only for folks who want to participate, it's not mandatory, but if you feel so inclined to march, what I'd like for us to do is, if you'd like to march around, we're just going to do probably 3 times around. And for us to practice, for us to do some moving, maybe some shouting. But if you'd like to march with me, I'm going to go around 3 times, even if I'm all by myself. And I hope that I won't be. So we're going to, if you'd like to march right now, let's come up to the front and form. We're going to do it like they did. They did two by two. So let's form ourselves 2 by 2. Let's make a line. All right. And I would like, this is great. Oh my goodness. Look at all these folks. This is more than I was expecting. All right. Yeah, wrap it all the way around. Wrap it all the way around. And let's pick one thing that we're going to shout for. So, candidates, everybody, reproductive rights. We want to shout for that?
Living wage.
Okay, let's do one time for reproductive rights. And okay, so we're gonna chant. What's a good is reproductive rights? We're gonna chant reproductive rights, and we're gonna go around one time. I'm gonna come down to the front and be in front, and we're gonna go around. Or I'm gonna go. Oof. I'm gonna start here, and once I get around to here, then we're gonna stop, and we're gonna pick a new slogan. Okay? All right. Okay. Reproductive rights. 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 Hey, reproductive rights. Yes, reproductive rights. Reproductive rights. Reproductive rights. Reproductive rights. Reproductive rights. Do it. Reproductive rights. 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 Okay, good job. Good job, everybody. All right. So next one. Living wage.
Living wage.
Living wage for all. Is that all right? Living wage for all? Okay. And this time, I used to be in the military, and I know that it works best if everybody starts walking at the same time. Or else you get this accordion thing, which is rough. Okay? So, let's start with the left. Start with the left side. Okay, so our chant is living wage for all. Living wage for all. Okay, living wage for all. Go! Living wage for all.
Okay, the chant now is. Oh, we're gonna do. Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay, so it's got two lines. I believe in you all. Care for the earth. Climate change is real. Care for the earth. Climate change is real. Go! Care for the earth. Climate change is real. 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 All right, together, everybody. All right, and we can go back to our seats. Good job, everybody. You all are amazing. You all are amazing, inspiring, beautiful, tremendous. Thank you for joining me. Man, also I might take off my coat. We are getting there. We are getting there. Okay, so thank you. That was beautiful. So we're gonna keep reading. Whew. Let's see what happened to Audrey. Okay. So, as they were marching, half a block from the church, a white policeman stopped Audrey. He pointed toward a police van. Sentence, 1 week in juvenile hall. A matron locked Audrey into a day room with two dozen other girls, all older, all bigger, all strangers. Audrey sat down alone and slipped the cover off her game. I told you to sit down, the matron yelled. Audrey jumped. She didn't remember standing up. The matron dragged her to a dark, empty room. When I tell you something, you do it, she commanded, or I'll leave you here. Trembling, Audrey quietly followed the matron back to the day room, put away her game,
lay down her head, and cried. Jail was harder than she thought, and she wasn't fine after all. By evening, Audrey was hungry and tired. For dinner, soupy, oily, tasteless grits. At night, a bare mattress with one thin sheet for a cover. Audrey and her cellmates were let outdoors into an empty concrete pen surrounded by high prison walls. The older girls talked together. Audrey wondered what her classmates were doing. Miss Willis would be keeping them busy. On another day, Audrey was sent to a huge room and told to sit in a chair that was so high. So very high, her feet dangled above the floor. 4 white men glared at her. She'd never talked to a white man before. "Are you against America?" one demanded to know. "No, sir," she answered politely. "What do you talk about at those meetings?" another asked. "Our freedom." "Why did you march?" "To go places and do things like anybody else." What was wrong with that? Every mealtime, Audrey stared at greasy grits. She could barely spoon them into her mouth, let alone swallow them. Every night, the cot's wire springs jabbed her. Every morning, she had nothing to do but sit alone with her game. In the afternoons, though, more kids crowded into the day room. Some days, many of them arrived sopping wet. A girl explained that firemen aimed powerful hoses at the children. Surging water spun them off their feet and down the street. They got up and kept marching anyway, until they too were sent to jail. By Audrey's 5th day in detention, the police couldn't squeeze in one more person. "We filled up all the rooms. We filled up all the rooms." Audrey practically jumped up and down. She was so proud. Watching television in the day room, she saw black people stroll straight into stores and restaurants like they belonged there. No one else could be sent to jail. Everything had changed. After 7 days, Audrey went home. Her mama and daddy wrapped their arms tight around her, washed the jail off her, and for dinner, hot rolls baptized in butter. 2 months later, the city of Birmingham wiped segregation laws clean off the books. Audrey licked her spoon clean at Newberry's counter like everybody else. Black and white together, like we belong. And that is the end of the book. That's great, yeah? So this event, or this story, which in history is known as the Birmingham Children's Crusade, put fuel back into the civil rights movement. People across the nation, including public officials such as U.S. President John F. Kennedy, were inspired to act. What these children accomplished would eventually lead to the passage of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Children and teens continue to fight hard for what they believe in till this very day. Like Mari Copenny, also known as Little Miss Flint, from Flint, Michigan. When Mari was 8 years old, she wrote a letter to President Barack Obama in order to draw attention to the water crisis in her hometown. The water was unhealthy for people to drink, and it seemed like no one in charge was doing anything about it. Her letter prompted a response from the president. On May 4th, 2016, Obama visited Flint to see closer up the devastation to the lives of Flint's citizens as a result of their lead-poisoned water supply. The visit contributed to nationwide awareness of the city's critical situation. Mari is a great example of someone in our time who found a cause that she believes in and finds a way to make a difference. Not everyone here will gain the national spotlight, but each of us, in our own way, can push for a better, more just world. Don't let anything stand in your way. Not your age, or your disabilities, or your fears, or other people's expectations of you. As we think about these inspiring stories, we, once again, as I said, we'll probably get ideas of ways that we can pitch in. ways that we can help. And there are big ways and there are small ways. You can trust your mind and your heart and your intuition and find those around you that will help you push when you are tired. Everything good in our history books has come from extremely ordinary people doing just that. And I know that each of you has it in you to be brave and ordinary and flawed and inspiring, just as it was with the great ones who came before. Thank you.
I don't know about you, but I kind of like being a protester. And kudos to Fritz. I think he's the youngest protester I've ever met. Our closing hymn is How Could Anyone? It's number 1053 in the Teal hymnal. The words will also be on the screen. Please join me in affirming our mission statement. By building a loving religious community that nourishes the spirit, celebrates life, and cherishes the connectedness of all things, we will transform ourselves and our world. So the hymn, anthem, choir. Wow. I think we have one of the best protest choirs in this nation. That's what I say. Our closing words today are from Robbie Novak, also known as Kid President. Some people will be boring this week. Not you. You've got too much awesome to spread. Go do it. And that's it.
You're not. You're just not going to do it? So do you have other stuff you need to do? No, not really. Okay. Coffee.
I remember my first protest march was in 1962. Oh, yeah? They bussed us in. I guess I'm fantastic. Rochester, where I went to school. Okay. And it was a march for peace, believe it or not. Okay. It was called the Women's March for Peace. It was,
Is that the same women's march that's still going on?
yes, but this was really early on. And President Kennedy actually came out from the White House up to the gates